Here from Planning and Productivity. So today I wanted to share one of my favorite quotes. Don't get it perfect, get it going. That is extremely relevant to me today because my lighting isn't working as expected, but I have this on my heart to share and I need to just get it out of my head and into the ether because I feel like it could help somebody else. I love sharing how I have developed my own systems because I have a very ADHD brain. And I know that's like a hot topic and it feels like everyone has ADHD these days. But if you have a brain that jumps around, has a hard time estimating time, has a hard time with completion, procrastinates, like if that sounds anything like yourself and you've had challenges with that in the past, hear me out because I have lived with this and I was very determined to find systems and ways of living that can help. And I feel like I've done that. I use a combination of both digital and paper planning tools. And I'm just going to share with you the systems that I have in place in my life that have really, really made a difference. So without further ado, let's jump in. So if you have a brain that is anything like mine, it is probably constantly coming up with fantastic ideas, things you need to remember. Thoughts are just constantly bombarding your brain. And it can be a lot to hold everything in your brain at once. And there's this lovely quote that says, your brain is for having ideas, not holding them. And when I heard that, that was such a huge unlock. And I was like, okay, I need to find a way to get all these thoughts out of my head, either on paper or into some kind of system so that I can then deal with them at the appropriate time. So I have a few systems in place. Now, ideally, what I would love to do and what I used to do like way back when is write them down. But I don't always have pen and paper with me. So that's not always as realistic and or practical. So for my primary method of capture, and for most of my personal, like things that I need to remember or things that I want to think about or like look into later, I use Siri. I'm always wearing my Apple Watch, like pretty much every day, like without fail. And it is my definite go-to. I am telling Hey Siri everything. So as soon as a thought pops into my head of something I either want to look up later, something I need to do, as I'm going through the house, if I notice like, oh, I really need to get to that thing and I don't have to do it right now or don't have time to do it right now, but I definitely want to remember, I'll go ahead and say, hey Siri, remind me to XYZ, and then it'll go straight to a triage list that I have created. Now, that is my main method of capture, is telling Siri everything. I have then created a specific triage list. So anything I tell Siri to help me remember specifically goes to the triage list. And then that list gets imported into a tool that I use called Sunsama. Now, you can use any other tool you like. Here's like the trick for me with this. Like, I used to use Siri all the time, but I never looked at the list. Like those to-dos and reminders would just languish there forever. But I plugged in Siri and these reminders, or the reminders that come from Siri, into the tool I actually use, which is Sunsama. I use it for work and I also now use it for personal use. And it has made a world of difference because all of those kind of one-off reminders that would otherwise kind of fall into the ether have now a place to go where I can look at them, triage them, decide, okay, is this something I need to do now? Is this something I can do in the future? Is this something I really need to or want to do at all? Sometimes no, and sometimes I'll just like backlog it or say like, remind me in like a month or something. But it gives me a place to capture all of those ideas and then a space to actually go through those ideas. So I'll actually share an example of like what that looks like in just a second. So that's my capture method number one. That is my on the go. If I'm in the car, if I'm cooking, if I'm just doing things around the house, that is my go-to. Okay, number two, if I am at my desk, if I'm actively working, again, this is a practice that I have honed over time because it is very easy for me to be like, think of an idea and immediately want to go do that thing and stop doing what I'm actually working on. And that just causes so much chaos in my day. So what I used to do before I had this method is if I had time blocked, like if I was focusing on a task and I was like, okay, for the next 30 minutes, the next hour, I'm going to focus on this task. If anything were to pop up in my head, I would write it down. And I would say, okay, when I finish this, I can look up that thing that I was interested in. I can ask that person about that question that just popped into my head, but I would have some place to put it so it would like leave me at peace and I know I would get to it, right? Because I think that's the thing with ADHD that's most frustrating is like if you don't act on this thought now, it will like vanish and you will completely forget about it. And I think that's the biggest fear, and that's why we feel like we constantly need to act on the things that we see. But having these methods of capture, like while you're working or while you're going about your day, allow you to know that like, I don't have to hold this in my brain or act on it immediately. I can have a space for it to be taken care of later. So instead of writing it all down while I'm working, I use quick keys. So if you're unfamiliar with quick keys, they're just like quick keyboard shortcuts. And these specific shortcuts link with Sunsama, the tool that I use that I absolutely adore. Again, you can use whatever tool you like. But if you have a tool, a quick keyboard shortcut that will allow you to like add tasks as soon as you think of them, get them saved to a place where you can deal with them later, that is most ideal. So that's what I do. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Okay, so this is the tool I use. It's called Sunsama, and it is my absolute go-to for all work-related things and personal life. Like I use this for literally everything. It is essentially like a digital planning tool, and I use this as my like the source of truth. Like this and my Google Calendar are where I know I can depend to have all of my to-dos. I start here and then I will eventually translate that to my planner. I've mocked up just like, this is like an example work channel, if you will. And this is what typical tasks would look like. I didn't put my actual work stuff in there, but you can get an idea of like tasks I would keep in there. So anyways, the quick keyboard shortcuts. There are a few. So if you're actually in Sunsama, you can just tap the letter A and they will open up a task window. So let's say I just remembered like, oh, I need to review report. Done. And now that is there and I can deal with that later. Now let's say I'm in a different tool, like maybe, I don't know if you use Notion at work or like you're just browsing the internet. So let's say, for example, I was using a different tool. Let's go to my email. Okay, perfect. So let's just pretend I'm going through my email here and I'm like, oh, I actually really want to look up this trip later. There are 3 keys that you can tap. You can set these up to whatever 3 keys you want, but I have it as Command, Shift, and U, and it will bring up this task description. Oh, it's in the center, so I'm not sure how much you can see. It looks like it's half cut off, but I'll go ahead and add look up airline tickets. And as you can see, like there's different channels here and you can have different channels for different things, but I'm going to put this in my personal channel. Look up airline tickets. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. All right, and then when I go back to Sunsama, if I go to my personal channel, I'll see, well, where is it? It's on today, that's why. Today is Saturday. Look up airline tickets. There you go, see? And I have all of these other random to-dos that I need to like actually handle today. But that's how it works. So what's really nice about that is like no matter what you're doing on your like on your computer at any time, if you have an idea, it's like, oh, I need to make sure to do that. You can do that. Another thing that I love about this is let's pretend we're on Tuesday, right? Okay, let me pull up something here. Okay, so here's another thing you can do. Like if you're actually on the internet, and here's an actual thing that I did. I was on this website and I was like, this is so cute. I don't have time to look through this or into this now. What I'm gonna do is save it for later. So I'll copy this link. I'll open up that shortcut. I'll actually add the link directly in there and I'll say, look up embroidery kits. And then maybe I'm gonna schedule that for Tuesday. And that's a personal task. Done. So now when I go back to Sunsama, look up embroidery kits and the link is already there and everything. And I absolutely love this tool. It's fantastic. Like that was a personal example, but imagine if you're doing work stuff, you're on lots of different websites, you're doing lots of different things. And I'm sure throughout the day you have these things pop up in your head and you're like, oh, I need to remember to do XYZ, or oh, I need to follow up with this person next week. This quick shortcut allows you to do that. And it's another capture method that allows you to pull things into the system and then handle them later. There's so many things I love about the Sunsama tool, and I can do a whole breakdown about them in the future. But another thing that I love is how you can schedule. So like, let's say these are the tasks you need to do for the day. Now these are like very simple, like personal tasks, but let's just say I'm going to add them to my to-do list. You literally just drag and drop them into your schedule and then they get time blocked. And that's how I personally time block. And what I love is you can easily move things around. It automatically updates. And so for me, this has been game changing. Now, I will do a deep dive into Sunsama, but I just wanted to show the ability to capture your thoughts and your ideas as you're moving throughout the day in a safe place that you can then handle later. So that's like the biggest thing that I want to get across here with using Sunsama. All right, moving along. Okay, and then my other favorite capture method is essentially using a similar idea using Sunsama. You can also use reminders, but I like to do it this way. So if I'm on a website, particularly on Instagram, like I'm sure you have like really great recommendations that show up for you, like things that you want to try, places you want to go, and maybe you save it and then it just like gets lost in the ether, never to be found again, and you never actually end up doing that thing or going to that restaurant. Here's a way to fix that. So what I do is, let's say I'm on Instagram, I will go find the thing, or if I see the thing, I will go there and then I will hit share and I will share it to Sunsama directly. And then I will give it a name, and this one is called a Floating Tea Party. Definitely something I want to check out. I'll put it under, I have a personal, under my personal section, there's specifically like travel planning and like kind of like travel planning and experiences. And then I will add it to that and I will look at that later today. And that way it doesn't get forgotten about. I don't have to stop what I'm doing in the moment. I can keep scrolling Instagram if I want to, or whatever the case is, but I will remember to do this adorable thing. That is step one, get a capture method. So I've shared my favorite capture methods, which are using Siri, which has a list that goes to directly, I have a specific triage list that I set up. That triage list then goes to Sunsama, where I actually process all of those to-dos and ideas. Or I use the Sunsama quick keys, or I use sharing it directly to Sunsama. Sunsama for me is like a fantastic tool. You don't have to use this one particular tool. If you want to try it, there will be a link in the box below. But there are lots of tools like this. So use your tool of choice, find one that works for you. This one has been a godsend. I've been using it for nearly 2 years now, and it's just been so extremely helpful for me. I can't imagine working remotely without it. Like I work in an environment that is it's not a very structured environment. It's one where you have to create structure for yourself. And I would have such a harder time if it weren't for this tool. So highly recommend it. So anyways, whatever capture method you want, whether it's a notebook and paper, whether it's using Siri, whatever the case is, get a capture method that you enjoy and that you will use. That's step one. Now let's go on to digital task and calendar management. So I use Google Calendar because I use it for work. I use it for personal life. It's just where I just keep all of my actual tasks. If I have a doctor's appointment, pretty much anything. Like if I have travel plans, almost every appointment that you have now has the option to add it to your calendar. So it's really nice. And I like having my Google Calendar as the source of truth. And of course, my Google Calendar easily integrates with Sunsama. So I can look at that and I know that whatever is on that calendar is a source of truth. Those are appointments that I have for today or meetings that I have, and that is a reliable place for me. I used to use my planner in such a way that like I didn't use digital tools in the past, and I would try to just like manage everything on my planner. But when you're kind of in both worlds, when you start to use a digital tool, it becomes difficult to like reconcile the two. And you're always having to make sure one is right. Like I used to use a vertical hourly planner and I loved that planner and it served me for a really long time. But once I started using Google Calendar pretty much all the time, I didn't really have a use for the hourly planner because I felt like I was just copying what was already existing. So that's why I'm in a different planner. But the point is, you need some way to capture your actual calendar. I personally love having my calendar as my Google Calendar as a source of truth. And then I use my planner for like the day-to-day breakdown. So you've probably seen it in some of my videos already, but what I will do is the night before, I will look at my calendar, see what meetings I have coming up, see what plans I have for the following day that are already like definite appointments and or meetings. And I just do that the night before because there is something about writing it down. Like I think there is something about writing it down that really helps you like plan out your day and think about like the sequencing of things. And I do think there's value in that. So I do it more so as a way to prepare myself for the following day, but I don't use it as a way to ensure that I will make that appointment. But for me, there's something about writing it down that kind of solidifies, okay, I know I have a meeting at 1 o'clock that I need to prepare for. It will remind me if I need to like prep anything for that meeting, or if I have a doctor's appointment, okay, I know I need to like finish working by this time in order to get to that doctor's appointment. Whereas if it was just on my digital calendar, although that is helpful, it doesn't help me understand time as well. Like online, I don't know, there's just something different about understanding time and space when you're actually writing stuff down. There's something about that spatial awareness that's different than digital tools. So although I like to have digital tools as the source of truth, writing them down makes them real for me. And I like to do that on a day-to-day basis. Let me know if that makes sense. I'm curious. Anyone else? Does that make sense to anyone else? Okay, so we're back over to my computer so I can show you what I mean about having my calendar, my digital calendar, be the source of truth. So next I would have a look, like let's say this is the day of, I would look at the personal tasks that I have to do and kind of see where they fit in. So these things are not that important, so I probably wouldn't put them during the workday. I'd move them out, maybe into the evening. Maybe during my lunch break, right after. Yeah, that seems appropriate. And then this would be a task that I would probably do, honestly, I would save this one for the weekend. So we're not going to put that on the calendar for the week. And then let's see, I would go to in this case, I'm going to go to my example work channel. And then I would say, okay, I'm going to do my inboxes first. Then I'm going to do this QA for release, but I have that meeting at that time, so I'm going to adjust it here. But that's going to take longer than just 30 minutes. So I need to make sure to add some time back in there. So anyways, you can like manipulate your tasks and adjust them on your calendar. But for me, the magic of this is that sometimes, okay, I'll tell you, when I first used this tool, the way that it works is you enter your tasks and then you add how much time you think it will take. And when I first did this, I kid you not, I added all my tasks that I had to do that I was keeping track of on my paper planner. And when I actually estimated how much time it would take, it was like 12 hours of work that I was trying to fit into one work day. And it instantly clicked as to why I wasn't able to get the things done that I wanted to get done in the time frame. I was just so out of touch with how long things would actually take, taking on more than I can actually do within that given time. That's why this tool has been such a godsend. So when you use this tool, you have to give an estimated time of how much time you think things will take. Now, you might be wrong when you first start. You might say, oh, it's going to take me an hour to check my email, and maybe it only takes you 30 minutes, or maybe you think it's going to take 30 minutes, but it actually takes an hour and a half. The beauty of it is that over time, you get to understand how long things take. I know on average, between all the inboxes I need to check in a day, it's going to take me about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how busy things are. That's just how long it takes. Like, I wish it didn't take that long, but in reality, that's how long it takes. And so I need to plan accordingly. So you might have an 8-hour workday, but if it takes 2 hours just to process all of the information in your various inboxes, connect with people, communicate with people, then you really only have 6 actual hours after that. And then if you have any meetings, you have to subtract it from that. So it just gives you a very realistic idea of the time you actually have. And then after that, you can prioritize, okay, what in this limited time frame, what is the most important thing that I need to get done right now, and plan accordingly. And this has been the biggest unlock, because you cannot do everything. You cannot do everything at once, for sure. So it really makes you prioritize and be really realistic with the time that you have. And that's why for me, this tool has been so important. So you can see on this day where I have only 6 hours and 40 minutes worth of work that I have scheduled here. In reality, between lunch, already scheduled meeting, and a doctor's appointment, it looks like I'm probably going to have to move some things around or move some of these things to a different day to actually accommodate those things happening. And I do like to leave a little bit of gap in between tasks, not a ton, but things will come up. So you never want to schedule yourself like if you have an 8-hour workday, don't schedule 8 hours worth of work, because you need to leave a little bit of space. Things might take longer. You might have somebody ask you to do something in the middle of the day that you didn't plan for. And so you need to leave a little bit of space there. So typically I like to plan maybe like 6.5 to 7 hours worth, but definitely no more than that. And then take it from there. If it's a particularly busy season at work, then I just know like I either need to start a little bit earlier, I might have to work a little bit later, or come back for like a second work session, which I have done from time to time where like I'll end the day maybe at like 5, 6, or 7, and then I'll come back for maybe like another hour. That's not always the case. It just kind of ebbs and flows. But in busier seasons, that's definitely something that I would do. But either way, this gives you a very really realistic idea of how you can fit in both your personal and work tasks. And for me, this has been the biggest unlock. And so you might say, well, why then would you need a paper planner if you have a digital planner, if you have this lovely digital planning tool? Like, what is the point of the paper planner? The paper planner for me is the sanity check, because even though I could have 6 tasks on my list of things I could do that day, the paper planner allows me a place to say, okay, of these things that I need to do, that I'm planning to do today, what is the highest priority thing? Like, what are the top priority things that definitely need to get done today? And that's what I put in my planner. And that's helpful because it anchors me and reminds me, like, if I start to get adrift, if I start to work on something a little too long that isn't on that list, then it brings me back. I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, I know I want to cross these things out. There's something about that motivating feeling of like crossing through something. I use a highlighter, which makes it a little prettier, but either way, like crossing through it, saying, I have completed this thing today, I have completed the mission, for me is really important. I also like to keep my personal tasks in there, because you could have 10 things you might need to do in a day, but of those 10 things, which ones are actually going to move the needle in projects in your personal life that like need to get done or time sensitive, that kind of thing. So for me, that's what the paper planner is for. And there's something very soothing to me about writing it down and writing it out and just having it. I keep it at my desk all day long. I don't take it with me. I used to take my other planners with me when I used to work outside the home. And if I worked outside the home, I'd probably bring it with me too. But it sits on my desk and it's just there. It's my anchor all day. I write a nice quote in it most days that kind of helps me remember like the purpose of that day. But I just find so much peace in a paper planner still, even with all of these other systems. So that's what I use my personal paper planner for. There's also something about, so for a period of time, I used an iPad planner. So where it's one of those where you just have like a PDF doc with like lots of pages in it, and some of them are like interactive and you can tap on different areas. If you've ever used an iPad planner, you probably know what I'm talking about. And even with Google Calendar, it's nice because it's your source of truth, but there's something for me that's just so much more tangible and like real when I have a physical book, when I can move the pages over and see like how time is actually passing. It just feels so different in a physical object than in the digital space. Like 2 weeks can feel like nothing has gone by digitally, but like when you go through the planner, like, I don't know, it gives you a different visceral feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like people who use paper planners will understand what I mean. And it's why I still use a paper planner despite all of these other digital tools and optimizations. So I know we covered a lot. I'm happy to dive even further. The things I mentioned are like things that are related to time blocking. There's lots of different strategies that I utilize that I didn't name specifically, but that is how I use all of these tools to be productive, both in my work and personally, and to stay sane and get so much done. I really hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or want me to dive deeper into any part of the system, I am so happy to do it. Or if you want more demonstrations, it is my favorite thing. So happy to help. Hope this helped, and talk to you soon. Bye. In the words of the wise Gretchen Rubin, don't get it perfect, get it going.